On April 14th, 1886, a tornado hit Sauk Rapids, Minnesota. The tornado destroyed 95% of Sauk Rapids, where it also killed 38 people. Though the tornado lasted only 22 minutes, it managed to crush Sauk Rapids businesses. The tornado was a turning point in central Minnesota history. Sauk Rapids is located in central Minnesota on the banks of the Mississippi River. This is Sauk Rapids today. With a population of just over 13,000 and many businesses, you might think Sauk Rapids is just a typical small town. It's hard to imagine, looking at it today, that Sauk Rapids was nearly wiped off the map. In 1852, the population of Sauk Rapids was over 1,000 people. They couldn't calculate the exact population because travelers were coming in and out of Sauk Rapids constantly. Sauk Rapids had the railroad, a military road, and river traffic all come through town. When Minnesota became a territory, Sauk Rapids was used as a base camp for soldiers to stay.
The story goes that there was a little bit of infighting going on down with the St. Paul politicians. And one of the politicians made a motion that up in St. Paul or up in Sauk Rapids that there were reasonable people, and that was a central Minnesota area, and so they should probably move the state capital up into that area. And we find very few little confirmations any place of that, but it was written up in one of the original territorial legislations that someone made a motion to move the capital of the territory of Minnesota up to Sauk Rapids. The motion, of course, failed, but that is how the story of Sauk Rapids was so important that it could have been the capital of the state of Minnesota came about.
In 1886, St. Cloud was catching up to Sauk Rapids in the population. The population in St. Cloud might have been a little larger, but Sauk Rapids was the second biggest business district in the area. Only Minneapolis was bigger. Around 4 p.m. on the Wednesday before Easter, a funnel cloud appeared close to North Star Cemetery, a mile southwest of the St. Cloud city limit, flattening gravestones. One eyewitness says the tornado must have formed rapidly and just about over the lake, as it was when first seen. It was very black and seemed constantly in motion. Next, the cyclone went over Calvary Hill, where Nicholas Juneman and his family lived. When Nicholas heard the strong wind, he walked to his front door and was sucked out of the house. He was found 3 days later, dead. He was the first person to die in the storm. His wife, Angeline, was carried several blocks and suffered face injuries and broken arms and legs. Angeline lived 22 more years without fully recovering from her injuries. The cyclone moved on to St. Cloud, where it hit John Tenvordy's house, ripping off the back porch and flattening a group of trees. Passing over St. Germain, the cyclone sliced off the roof and second story of John Schwartz's fancy brick home. He rebuilt the house after the cyclone. In St. Cloud, the cyclone killed 20 people, and the damage totaled up to $176,000. Still showing no signs of stopping, the cyclone continued on to Sauk Rapids, which had a population of 1,000, and killed 38 people, including Bank President Edgar Hall. It crushed half of the wagon bridge before destroying Santon's flour mill. According to St. Cloud Times, the cyclone hovered over the Mississippi River, where it seemed to hang motionless as it sucked up water. The monstrous storm hit the Northern Pacific Railroad depot before going through Sauk Rapids Business District, destroying all the buildings on River Street. The cyclone demolished the courthouse, the school, the post office, newspaper offices, a 3-story hotel, and 200 houses. Out of money, the school had closed 5 days before the cyclone, saving the lives of many children. After the courthouse was destroyed, county records were found scattered across 20 miles of prairie. 95% of Sauk Rapids was destroyed in the storm, and damage totaled up to be $300,000. St. Benedict's Hospital was close to destruction, but ended up pretty much untouched and was used as a center for recovery. After destroying most of Sauk Rapids, the cyclone moved on to Rice, then arrived at Rice's station, 13 miles away. At the farmhouse of Charles Schultz, a crowd had gathered to celebrate his daughter's wedding. When the cyclone was finished, 10 people were dead, including the groom and the minister, and the bride had lost the use of one of her arms. After destroying the wedding, the cyclone moved on to Buckman, where it killed 2 people. Moving on to Piers, the cyclone took a last life. Finally, it lost its strength at Sullivan Lake in Morrison County. In just 22 minutes, the cyclone shattered hundreds of windows, ripped hundreds of trees out of the ground, and destroyed hundreds of sheds and small houses. The buildings that stood the strongest during the cyclone were made out of granite or brick. Many people lost their lives and homes from the tornado, and many people were injured. Nationwide newspapers reported on the storm. After being sent a dispatch from St. Cloud stating that a horrible tornado struck, physicians came from St. Paul, Minneapolis, Anoka, and Brainerd to help the injured and dying. Provisions started coming into St. Cloud and Sauk Rapids. Nurses also came from St. Paul and Minneapolis. The cyclone had destroyed all of Sauk Rapids' churches, so 38 coffins were put on wagons and prayers were said among the dead. The person who gave the largest single donation was James J. Hill of the Great Northern Railroad, donating $5,000 for recovery. People rebuilt their houses or businesses in brick so they would be safe if a huge storm happened again.
The people of Sauk Rapids, it was so important to them to have a community newspaper that one of the really great stories that came out of Sauk Rapids was their newspaper office was destroyed. The building was. Now, the presses ended up being okay, but they couldn't put a newspaper together right away. So what they did is got as much information on their tornado that happened April 14th, 1886. And then they turned around and got it together and took it over to St. Cloud to have that one April 20th edition published.
The ranking of the Sauk Rapids tornado was an F4 to an F5. Meteorologists believe this storm might have been 2 tornadoes joined together. The director of the Minnesota Weather Society at that time, William W. Payne, said the location of the Sauk Rapids tornado was surprising because it occurred so close to what was believed to be the northern limit of tornadoes. In fact, it was the most northerly point at which a destructive tornado had ever been known to occur within the United States, and to this day it remains the deadliest tornado in Minnesota history. Financially, St. Cloud's business district was untouched by the storm. The people of Sauk Rapids had to reach out to St. Cloud for supplies, further building St. Cloud's economic strength. Politically, the city of Foley took advantage of Sauk Rapids' weakness by calling for an election, which resulted in the removal of the county seat from Sauk Rapids to Foley. To this day, there are still memories of the tornado in Sauk Rapids. In remembrance of the tornado, the Sauk Rapids Rice Public Schools mascot is the storm. There are also a few buildings that survived the tornado and are still standing today. One of them, the Robinson-Staton House, is on the corner of 2nd Avenue and 2nd Street South, and was built in 1874. Another surviving house is the Carpenter House, located at 108 3rd Avenue North. The other surviving house is the Kronk House, located at 600 3rd Avenue North. The last surviving house is the home of W.H. Fletcher, located at 810 2nd Avenue North. These are the only surviving buildings documented so far. The Sauk Rapids tornado was a turning point in central Minnesota history because it damaged not only buildings, but the financial and political strength of the community as well.
I remember tears streaming down your face when